super freaking lazy day. I'm loving it. I have a free Friday. My freaking schedule, how it's been freaking clear for like the past 2 freaking days. I was supposed to pop in yesterday, and then they were like, we don't need you to pop in. So I was like, I'm sleeping in all day, but I had to deliver some packages, clean up a bit, because my house was getting freaking ridiculous. Our floor was just looking like just yucky as heck, from our bathroom to like both of our bedrooms, our freaking stair area. I did the kitchen like, I would say like earlier in the weekish or so it wasn't like as bad, but everything else needed some freaking love. And then what did I do when I got back? I think I did some puppy time for a bit and ended up chilling and relaxing with the puppy. Then I left my wallet in an Uber a few freaking days ago. So luckily the freaking good Samaritan who found my wallet, who got in the Uber after, ended up freaking finding me on Facebook like a freaking like awesome individual. And then she ended up connecting with me, so we were able to freaking plan everything out, meet up in like a freaking mutual spot. Cause I didn't want to be like, where are you? I'll come to your house and come meet you. Cause I know like me personally, I don't know, I would feel uncomfortable like, just telling somebody, I have your stuff, come find me, or like come pop up to my house. Cause what if I'm like a crazy person and she's like giving me her address, and then like what if like I had something of hers and I'm like telling her to come to my place and I'm like a freaking psycho who's like trying to lure her in. What's gonna be one of the freaking major topics in this video, because we're gonna be talking about freaking just major freaking notions that have been, spoken about in society and reference towards. It's like stereotypical points that I can tell you personally that I have been able to see firsthand, and it's like kind of like a warning video, but it's more so it's like covering what's going on in society. I feel like that's like my new it's my new topic area to freaking like touch base on. I did freaking the economic freaking like environment, inflation, we touched base on that, bankruptcies, major companies. And then aside from that, you guys can go check out all of my legal videos on DKH Legal Aid. I really just want to give you guys some great topics, some great insight pertaining towards life topics that you guys can freaking relate to, especially if you live here in the US. They're like topics that are covering life and everything going on here. And if you live anywhere internationally, you can kind of relate them towards things that you see in your day-to-day life. Most of the stuff is like generalized, where you can kind of rephrase it to kind of fit your own situations, and just a bunch of freaking other good stuff. I'm chilling with the puppy though and loving the freaking free day. I've got to take a bath after those. I was like, before I do the freaking bath sesh, I really want to freaking do the video, give you guys some updates. I'm also going to be starting new album projects soon, you guys. I was like chilling and relaxing like a few days ago, and in the midst of it, a new song came to me, so I started like adding it to my freaking notes. I had like the first 4 lines of it, and then during the following day I was like, let's work on it a tad more. This was like yesterday after I had finished like doing everything, and I was like chilling in bed. In the midst of me like coming home from meeting up with the girl to grab my freaking wallet from her, I was so excited because I was like, I literally wanted a bottle of champagne earlier, and I was like, I can't grab any champagne. I can't freaking grab like a bottle of tequila. As you guys know, I'm like a big freaking like champagne and wine lover. And then for the weekend flows, I love to literally sit back with like a mixed drink and then save the champagne for like later-ish during the freaking week flow. That way when it gets super busy, I can freaking wind down with the freaking like mimosa. After popping into freaking work, I can like wind down after, have a freaking mimosa, and then I'll grab some wine for grams, and then sometimes I'll grab like enough wine for me to do like my mimosa sessions, and then grab a bottle of wine after or so. But it's just a typical like chill flow. But in the midst of doing all of that, I stopped in the Aldi, I got some freaking essentials, but before getting there, like, I literally got, like, I would say, like, maybe, like, 10 feet from the freaking Aldi, like, front door area, and my bike started, like, freaking, like, cutting out, and I literally just driven past a freaking gas station. I stopped at Subway, because I was like, I'm freaking hungry, I'm gonna grab some grubs. And I was like, I should probably go stop at the gas station, but I was like, no, do it like a tad later-ish. I'll like grab my gas can, go fill it up, and then I'll like, fill up the bike also. And then that way when I get home, I can add the oil to the freaking like gas can, and then there will be the oil mixture with the gas already in the freaking bike, and it should be fine. Because I was expecting there to be like a decent bit after. Like typically I can get to work like 20 miles away and then get back with there's still being gas within the freaking tank and stuff. Or I think it was like maybe like, I would say at max like 15 miles away or so. But I was like, it should be freaking fine. It started cutting out, so I had to walk my bike all the way back. Luckily, it was only like a 2-block freaking walk, but it was a freaking workout, you guys. I had the freaking like, I think I had like one bag on my arm, and then I had my backpack on, and it was straining as freaking heck. But in the midst of me walking back, I like saw these guys, and there was like this guy and this other guy, and it looked like they were like working on their cars, and I was like, maybe one of them happens to have like some gas. If not, it's nothing really like major. So I called over to the guys. I was like, hey, this is like random as heck, but like, do you guys happen to have like any like extra or backup gas? Because when I looked over towards the other car, also from the guy who was like, out of like view, which I didn't know was his car. I thought it might have been the other guy's car. I wasn't really sure, but I was like, if there's a gas can, maybe they're like me, and maybe they have like a type of extra gas. But with it being in the car, as you guys typically know, the gas can's typically just in the car in case you need it. So it's like, maybe there's nothing in there, but it never hurts to freaking ask. That way I can fill up the tank before getting home, and then fill it up the rest of the way once I get home, because I had some gas at home. The guy who was working on the car like pops around. Are you done chilling on the bow? He's going to the bathroom. He pops around and gives me like the dirtiest freaking look ever, and I was like, you know what? This is ridiculous. Like, I feel like there are so many freaking days that I can go through where everybody's just freaking, they're bright, they're chipper, they're bubbly, like they're literally just exactly what you're asking for. Like, even with the person that I'd met earlier who found my wallet and like went out of her way to freaking like find me, locate me, and freaking plan with me to freaking like, return my wallet. That was something that I was like, this is ideal. This is like the world that I'm freaking used to. But then with the other guy, it was like, I'm talking to him, he's giving me like a dirty look. He gives no reply. Like, when I called over to him, the other guy like looked at me, but he was like, he looked like instantly over towards the other guy, because the other guy stopped what he was doing, and then he was like walking over, and I was like, okay, so maybe he was just referencing towards the other guy, like, probably having the answer. And then the other guy popped up with a freaking dirty look. He walks over to his freaking trunk, and like, it's just like, he's just had like the crappiest freaking attitude ever. And I was like, what the freaking heck? It's not my fault that you freaking do like house calls. And it's gonna be another reference in towards like later in the video with bunch of the freaking off the books jobs. Like, it's so sad, but as I stated in a bunch of the other videos, with a lot of major companies that have always been around for years, and franchises and stuff, going down and going under the freaking job market. And as mentioned in the scams video, a bunch of the job offers out there for scams, and they're literally just like, people sending out fake job offers that aren't freaking real. They're looking to steal your information. They're looking to kind of lure you in, waste your time, and then in the midst of it, your entire life could freaking fall apart. So a lot of people are, trying to do freelance jobs, which isn't a bad thing. But a major thing that we have going on here is people doing freelance jobs where nothing is ever freaking on the books. And it's like one of those things in itself where it's like, it can be okay if you're just doing like, random freaking jobs for people, and then it's like, something that you do like all the time, but it's something that you always want to work towards having like, documented. You want to have it as, a noted income source, and then you don't want it to fall within the freaking parameters, because this is what happens to a lot of people when it's something that you can't really manage. People kind of veer from, doing odd-end jobs to, doing illegal activity, and then pairing their odd-end jobs with illegal activities. And then for people who like had businesses and they're going under, as I stated in the other one, there are a lot of businesses that, when they get hit with those hard months where it's like, there's not enough income really coming in to fully support all the expenses, such as, employees, new inventory, the cost of leasing, and so many other aspects. Advertising is one of those added aspects also. And when all of that starts to freaking add up, it's you paying out the typical amounts that you're set to cover, but then it's like you have no revenue coming in to really support that. You have enough revenue coming in to like, partially support it, and the rest is coming out of pocket. So if you go through the recovery phases, it's like, do I cut my losses now? Do I send out notices to everybody? Or do I find another way to supplement my income? And when doing so, a lot of people go for illegal activity. But you guys, that's it for part 1. I'm going to pause this one for my YouTubers. As you guys know, you're going to get like the full freaking videos from my TikTokers and maybe my Instagrammers. You guys are going to get the parts of the videos. Alright, to part 2, guys, I'm like trying to remember all the freaking reference points. I feel like a bunch of them I'm gonna literally end up in a draw for my own life, so I can literally remember everything that was noted towards. As I stated in the first one, though, you guys, I did finish 2 songs so far. I'm planning to at least record maybe one later-ish. I might do both, but I'd say one overall, because I'm gonna literally do like the troubleshooting. I want to try like adding different freaking vocal tracks throughout the freaking song, really like judge it up a bit, make it like more fun, and I just want to try like some new stuff with this one. Like I feel like whenever I've done like the other albums, it's literally been like me just doing my initial drafting phases of it. You know, the beginning level of freaking like, you know, putting an audio to a freaking track, tying everything together, and literally like finalizing it, freaking trying to revamp it as best as I freaking can with my beginner freaking skills with no freaking. I didn't do like any research into like any of this stuff, so I literally just worked on freaking doing what I thought would be freaking best for making the tracks. Luckily, aside from my actual initial freaking drafting phases when I did like my first freaking album and stuff like that, it's gotten better over the years from the experience, but I still have never really gotten to use any of the tools or like tips from others. So I've been picking up a few cool tips. I've been checking out a bunch of platforms that I like had seen years ago that were recommended by old friends. So going to add those into the flow and mix, try to add in some things that I've learned, and then hopefully bring in some of my old tools also to tie everything together. And with any luck, you guys will end up loving the final projects. I am going to be, let's see, hopefully releasing at least one next week. I'm hoping I can freaking finalize. I have to do like some freaking like pics and everything to freaking like finalize the freaking sad look for it, and just really like, you know, make sure it's really like fun, snazzy, and enticing, so you guys can go, you know, check it out. I'll have it likely streaming on freaking YouTube. I'll have the video like available. The song will be streaming on Audio Mag. I'll likely post it here on TikTok, and then also post it and share it on my Instagram. I'll probably share like a snippet or so on X, maybe like the full song, since you can actually do like lengthy videos now. You'll definitely be able to check it out on Threads also, or at least go to the streaming links and check it out. If you have me on my OnlyFans, as you guys know, there's only like, you know, regular content on there, so you'll be able to check it out there. You can also find a few of my other songs available on there, so you can like check out my songs on there. You can freaking play through them there, or you can go to the streaming platforms and check them out. But touch base on freaking like, you know, typical freaking stereotypes that of, you know, and you guys know my typical freaking vibe would be to literally, you know, talk about, you know, going against depression and the stereotypes, but in this one I actually want to touch base upon a lot of things that are like, you know, present in society. And you guys, I'm supposed to be like literally flat ironing too. I have like my flat iron freaking on, got my brush, each of my freaking combs in front of me, because, you know, the bottoms of them, like overall it's like, it's given freaking like cute, like, you know, can freaking go through the day vibes, you know, like messy bohemian kind of like flow, but the bottoms are just looking like that. It's looking like just ridiculous. It's like a freaking like mess in person. Like it looks crazy here, but it looks like even like crazy in person. It looks like that has like little freaking froze at the bottom of it. But yeah, so I'm gonna touch base a tad more on the like off the books working like kind of things. And let's see, so if you've seen my freaking video of like my 5-minute boyfriend, it was this guy that I dated a few years ago. It was when I was like really planning to freaking take a break from the entire like, you know, guy pursuit, and I really just wanted to focus on, let's see, school and, you know, working as a teacher overall, because it's like, you know, school, you freaking walk in, you're teaching, you're in the freaking school, your mindset is literally focused on the freaking children all day, and then after work you want to wind down. But in my case, I had freaking schoolwork to do, unless I decided to bring like my schoolwork with me to work. But with it being like a constant thing, it's not like every freaking time you're gonna want to freaking like bring in everything with you. Sometimes there are like those busy days where you're rushing, so it's like you like may forget to bring it, and then it's like, you know, the stuff to still work on at home. And it's like, let's see, I wanted to set my focuses to be primarily on school, work, my family, and overall my health and wellness, because I was still, leery of my health after that freaking like first abscess that I got in 2019. I literally just started popping back in the workforce back in like 2000 and freaking like 2021ish. I didn't like really like work outside of the house in 2020. We were doing like mostly online work and working on starting our businesses, getting them like established, trying to like, grow a customer base, grow our like online presences of the freaking brands themselves. And in the later years I was like, I'm ready to get back into work. My mom was freaking like reaching out to me, and she was like, do these freaking certification courses and they'll help you to be eligible to work within the early childhood field without having to get your degree at early as heck. And I was like, oh, that's freaking perfect, because I still have to pay off some of my freaking student loan freaking stuff and all the things that are causing like holds on my initial freaking like associates. So I was like, this will be freaking perfect. And luckily I was able to go back to school, in 2021 after I had returned to working. Well, actually, no, I ended up returning to working like around the exact same time that I had started going back to school, which is freaking great in itself. But I was able to start working because I took the certification courses that she told me about, and they helped a lot with like, a bunch of great info. And it also kind of, helped me, want to pursue learning more. So I then pursued getting my child development associates in both family, childcare centers, and infant and toddler, which helped a freaking lot, like on the freaking job, because there were a lot of aspects where I was just like, I babysat and I've dealt with freaking like children before, but it's like so many different children, and there are so many different things going on in their lives, so many different freaking health factors going on, so many worries. Like there was like the hands, foot, and mouth outbreaks all the freaking time. Then we had COVID going on, so we had like classrooms getting freaking shut down. There were like weeks where our freaking we wouldn't like typically shut down entire facilities, but we'd have to shut down classrooms, send kids home and stuff like that. And a few times it was like literally like my classroom, so our classroom would either be shut down for like a freaking like a week or like freaking like a few days. And then we could freaking return to work, and then it'd be like jumping back into the flow and stuff like that. But it was tedious in itself, but it was great to be able to like study and learn stuff about that, learn about, managing stuff like that in the workplace. And it helped a lot in my like final years in early childhood education to kind of have more insight as towards how to handle a lot of the situations, what things were legal within the classroom and what things were not legal, because typical things such as, feeding your baby a bottle in the crib is something that like, you could do at home, and it seems normal. But if you do that in an actual facility, it's like against the law. And I remember I had this one girl who I worked with, and there was like a bunch of freaking drama. It was like super freaking messy, but I was like always getting thrown under the bus, and I was like, I'm just a freaking floater. Like I literally like I'm still learning the freaking ropes here. Like, can I not get thrown under the bus all the time? It's like, can I get some freaking wiggle room for stuff? Because it would be like, things such as, let's see, because I lived like 2 hours, it was like a 2-hour commute to get to work. And there were days where it's like, if I got to the train station and it was like, 5 minutes too freaking late, like the train is already freaking gone. And then by the time I'd freaking arrive, the train would be like ready to freaking depart, and it's like you can't freaking get all the way up the freaking stairs to get to the freaking like metro trains when they're upstairs, or when they're downstairs they're like up 3 freaking flights of stairs and down 3 freaking flights of stairs and stuff. So trying to run to the train to like catch it in time is just something that you can't freaking do. And then when you have to wait for the next one, it's like they don't go like every few minutes or so, they don't go every hour, it's like every freaking like 2 hours or so. So it would be, what someone else should I say, I missed the train by just a few. I literally don't have the money to do like a freaking like $60 freaking Uber ride today. Because typically I would. I literally just freaking go like, I'm running a tad late, I'm booking an Uber right now, I'll be there in like, 30 minutes or so. Because no, I think it's like maybe like 30 minutes to like an hour. No, like 30 minutes to. So like it gets crazy, but there was like a bunch of drama. But in the midst of it, there was this lady, and she was like training everybody in the classroom, and she kept telling them, it's okay to feed the babies their bottles while in the freaking, classroom. It's like if it's nap time or so, or if the baby's ready to take a nap, you can just put them in the crib and give them the bottle. Or if it's just their bottle time, you can literally put them in the crib also and freaking give them the bottle. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going down for this time. And then you just like, and I kept getting assigned to like pop into that one because I was like, I love doing infant and toddler teaching, so I freaking loved it. But there was this other age group that was like the younger infants, and I loved working with like that class, so I tended to like literally always request to like pop into that one instead. In the midst of freaking that though, I like popped in, and she was like training this new girl, and she was like telling her the same thing that she told me, where she was like, you can just give them the bottle in class. And this was after I had spoken to somebody in the facility who was like, DCFS is going to be coming for an inspection. You guys remember what's like against the rules? You can't feed the babies the bottles while in the freaking crib and stuff like that. And I was like, well, that lady's been telling everybody that it's freaking okay. And then when you guys freaking like pop in, you're gonna freaking think that it's like, somebody else getting their own idea, trying to do something that's like against the rules. And then it's other people getting freaking fired because there's misinformation being freaking shared here. So I was like, you know what, this time I'm gonna take the, giving everybody the benefit of the doubt card out of play and literally just freaking report this. So that way it's something that, number one, the boss can freaking deal with on her own. If it's something that she deals with like while I'm there, it'll be freaking fine. If it's something that she deals with, when I'm not there, it'll be freaking fine also. But honestly, I was like, this one, it might not be one that, like, it's, something that's going to last. Number one, it was, like, really freaking far out to get there. But I really did like the freaking crew and everything like that. Like, it was really, like, down to earth. And there were a bunch of chill freaking moments, but the freaking boss and owner of the facility was like really weird. She had like her racist moments, and then she ended up hiring this freaking African American woman, and then she was like hired as a freaking floater, and in the midst of her like sending out a bunch of freaking like requirements for people to freaking do throughout the day, the freaking lady ends up sending her a message, and she like ended up like she just like full on just went like massa on her, and I was just shocked. I was like, overall, it seems like it's like typically fine, like there aren't any freaking like out of the ordinary things going on, but I wouldn't freaking even like add that freaking notion to it to just avoid causing the freaking drama there. Like everything seemed stable, it seemed fine as long as nobody stirred the pot, and then she freaking just stirred the freaking pot, and then after she had like this entire freaking mob of like people that I would just throw in the category of being brown, because they weren't like, all African American per se, since some were mixed and stuff like that. But it was like her entire posse, and it was like the only like set group of people that she would actually talk to and interact with. And I was like, what the freaking heck? But this stuff like actually freaking happens and takes place, and it's like one of those things where it's like you would think that it's like not really relevant, and that maybe these things are just kind of just based off of old stereotypes and things that are just kind of brought back at times. And sometimes there are moments where it's like it's made out to be it, so there's a lot going on like pertaining towards that when there's nothing really going on that's like out of the ordinary. But sometimes it's like really freaking like it's weird, it's cliquey, there's a bunch of racism. Like during the freaking pandemic, when everybody was freaking going through the recovery phases, there were so many freaking just race freaking like wars going on throughout the country. Then we had the freaking we had the death of that guy. So sorry to like any of you that freaking know it's I'm gonna like see if I can pull it. He passed in 2020. I dropped the video too because I was freaking shocked when I heard about it, because it was like I dropped a video where I was like telling you guys about how I went to freaking jail like a few years ago, and it was like this like entire thing where I was like, I got like attacked by the officer and stuff, and then in the end, I was like, they were like time served for the freaking like 15 days in jail, and they dropped basically all the charges, and then they dropped the fines and stuff like that. But then like I would say like maybe half a year later or so, they dropped the freaking story of the guy who had literally been attacked and killed by police. Let's see, man attacked and killed by police in 2020. Oh my gosh, it was George Floyd, you guys. Wait, let me double check it. Yeah, George Floyd. And it was like really freaking shocking, but it caused an entire movement throughout the freaking nation. And there were like walkouts, rallies, people were like rallying together. It was like a freaking like racial equality kind of thing, and then they were like, you know, taking a stand against the cops. And then there were many that took like a stance where they were like, you know, no, that's the same BS that always happens here. And then everybody's always like, you know, it was just the cops, it was just this, it was just that. And then they're like, you know, as we've stated, we still live in a freaking racist country, so it's just the racism that never ends. And it's just, I don't know. It's kind of like a standard of, you know, it's like, just imagine like being at home, and it's like, you know, when there are guests over, your family is like freaking being like super fake and stuff like that, and acting like everything's like perfect, and then when they're not there, it's just a bunch of freaking drama and stuff. That's kind of like the flow that a lot of people like feel here, and then it's like, you know, I might have to take a break after this one. I'm like feeling like a major tickle in my throat. But a lot of them are kind of just like, you know, it never ends. It's like the never-ending battle of freaking racism and oppression here. So, as stated, we had freaking outbreaks. We had a bunch of people like popping up, you know, doing like racial freaking outbursts, calling people the N-words. People were attacking each other, rioting. And this was after the George Floyd thing. And for a lot of it, people weren't sure if it was like, you know, related towards the freaking pandemic, towards the George Floyd situation, or what was really causing all the hostility within the nation. But it's something that always like carries on here, and a bunch of people will blame it on freaking politics. They'll blame it on freaking racism that's freaking built into society and taught from freaking parents to their children and stuff. But a lot of it's influenced by society. It's influenced by things that are freaking enabled throughout. And I would say the only major thing to freaking do to really help it would be to freaking address things head on. But it's kind of just like one of those things that you can't really like feasibly do. That's like how would you address 300 million people about racial instability, about, you know, racial biases, what's just and what's unjust, in a place that has like no freaking order, that has no boundaries set for those things that are upheld by the people itself. So it just overall creates this big it's getting me overall divide. I'm gonna have to turn my humidifier up, turn the fan on, and then hopefully it clears out whatever is in the freaking air getting me. But I'll touch base more on this in part 3, you guys. Oh wait, no. Alright, you guys, I just watched part 3, turned up the humidifier, opened my window a tad more, and I've got the fan on now. Fingers crossed it freaking helps. I'm feeling a tad better, but I've learned that if I talk in like a lower pitch, it tends to help a bit, so I'm like not like every 5 freaking seconds. But yeah, so it's like a lot of racial instability, a lot of racial freaking biases, and it was one of those major notions where I know if you're like me and you're a business owner, or if you're a parent, if you're a concerned citizen who pays attention to this stuff in society, or if you're just anybody who's like, you know, quote unquote woke, you kind of like already know like the flow where it's like, you know, these are things to be mindful of when you're sending your family into the workplace and stuff like that. You don't want them to be racially discriminated against. We have laws to protect people from that, but if people don't uphold the laws and if people try to find sneaky ways around it, such as, you know, acting as though because a lot of people will do this where they'll smile in your face, they'll walk you through it like they know how to play the character. And you guys know we all know how to play the character. It's like, you know, oh my gosh, how are you? Thanks so much for coming. Oh, you look stunning. I love your curly hair. That is so freaking cute. Or, you know, the African American to the white woman. I love your freaking hairstyle. Did you just throw it up in a freaking pony? Like, I'm gonna rock this and be business chic? Go white girl. But they probably, I would say, wouldn't add in the white girl part because you're trying to go for the character that isn't racist or isn't trying to, you know, call out things that are different for that notion. So you're trying to give a compliment, but in your mind you're like, you know, insulting them, but they're taking the compliment as an insult. And it's something that, you know, it's something to be mindful of because we're coming from, again, a society where slavery ended like freaking, oh my gosh, what was it? It was, you know, these are horrible freaking things that I always freaking forget the exact time frames for because I always want to say 1763, but I always feel like it's 1863. One sec. The Civil War. Okay, yeah, 1860. So, the Civil War happened in 1860. The Third Amendment was added. Let's see. This one was one that I studied on, you guys. I think I did like an entire video about it, covering the freaking amendments in the Bill of Rights. And I still always forget this one, which is freaking horrible, because I talk about it quite frequently when doing videos covering like aspects such as this. And it still always slips my mind. When I'm writing a paper, I always freaking am like, that's such an interesting fact point, and I still freaking forget the years for it. When was the 13th Amendment? Oh gosh, how did this next to stop? When was the 13th Amendment added or ratified, you guys? Sorry. Alright, the 13th Amendment was ratified by U.S. Congress on December, starting again, 6th, 1865. So, let's see, we are at like the, nearly like 200th freaking year. I'd say like one, like, let's say 100, then 45, so 145 plus 20, 165 plus the 6, 1, oh wait, yeah, okay, so 171, so 171 freaking years. And it's something that still impacts people throughout the freaking society. We still have freaking, we still have freaking notions towards it within society, but we'll touch base on that a tad, like just a few. But the overall acknowledgement of these inequalities was something that was noted that far back in society, and it's still impacting people today. And a notion towards the 13th Amendment, slavery is still something that's talked about on the ballot. As you guys know, I went back home to California in 2024 at like the end of the year, and at this point it was like right before election season began. I'd gone like right before my birthday, but while checking out the freaking ballot, because I was doing like a home ballot set, one of the notions on the ballot was to bring back slavery, and I was shocked overall. I was like, this is getting ridiculous. Like, I feel like everything in society is just turning to freaking like crap at this point, and people are just like, they're putting the crap forward for people, and then they're literally leaving it to us at the point to either say, stop being ridiculous, or for us to literally just go, yeah, we're here for all the BS, let's freaking risk our lives, risk our freaking freedom, and freaking just turn the entire country to like a freaking crap hole. Which in itself, like, you guys just think about it, we live in this country where our major basis is freaking being this corporation of a country, and a lot of the things that people do just, it hurts our credibility as a freaking business and a corporation. It just makes us all look bad. Like, when there's freaking racist stories hitting the freaking scenes, it makes us all look bad. Like, are we freaking unstable? Is racism still a prevalent thing here? When there are freaking kids, you know, writing swastikas on freaking synagogues and spray paint. When there are cops detaining, you know, the wrong person because they are African American for a crime that they didn't commit, and then they kill them after, then it becomes a freaking international story, because again, we're at that freaking major freaking, we're in that major country where it's like you hear about this stuff. It's like the same with freaking major controversial news stories hitting the scenes in places such as France, England, Germany, let's see, India, China, Japan, West Africa, and so on and so forth. There are a bunch of like other major countries where, like, you know, major news stories always hit that international freaking, like, you know, barrier, and then are available everywhere. Here, it's nearly every freaking story. If freaking Kim K goes out in a freaking racy outfit, it's an international freaking news story, and it's like, you know, a lot of people want to note it as just being like, you know, gossip or just, you know, celebrity chatter, but it's like, no, it's an international freaking news story that people are covering, talking about. It's not only hitting major freaking like news companies, major magazines, it's hitting social media. Influencers are covering, people that cover freaking vlog segments pertaining towards the news are covering it, and it's just all over the freaking place. So when stuff like that happens, it makes us all look bad, and I don't know, it's just, it's ridiculous in itself, but it's always up to the people to stand for the ideals that our society has created throughout the years, rather than looking back at other points and trying to make our society go backwards, which tends to be a factor that's thrown into play a lot, but luckily a majority of society doesn't typically, like, majority of society typically won't go for it, but there are times where we each can feel, so we can look at others that are like, you know, if you're a maybe guy on this subject, we may need to literally look back and talk about all the things that we've come from that were influenced by the opposite belief of this subject that we're freaking on. And then it's just the debate points, the freaking differences in views, and in the end, it's all about standing behind the just goals for our society, our people, and the future of our country as a whole. Alright, you guys, in part 5, we're going to be touching base upon racial stereotypes within the younger African American communities, and the reflection upon these stereotypes shown in day-to-day situations that I've actually been through, an insight as towards how these things actually take place and where you can actually see this stuff happen. Alright, you guys, part freaking 6. Still got that check on my throat, but I'm gonna do like this part and then one more part, so it should be doable. and take a bath after. Hopefully it helps with that, but maybe it might, whatever the heck it's in the air in my room will clear out a bit. We've got a thunderstorm going on. I'm guessing maybe there's something flowing through the freaking air out there that's like coming through my freaking screen, and my window has to be freaking clean. I'm gonna have to bring like the vacuum to get all that dust out of there. Maybe that's like flowing back in with the freaking wind flow and the thunderstorm freaking stuff like going on in the midst, but it's freaking getting me. Oh. And you know how it gets like trapped in like your throat, and it's like in that mucous membrane. It's like in there, so it's like trying to talk and like trying to clear it while it's in there. It's just freaking no go. But again, I'll talk in like a low type of tone and see how this freaking goes. So with the influences in the African American communities for the younger age groups, there were a lot of stereotypes based towards, you know, young African American man, you know, just, you know, shooting for just being a baby daddy rather than a husband, becoming drug dealers rather than getting actual jobs, and just so many other notions. And I'll try to touch base on as many as I can and try to add in like these stereotypes and with them, and then the reflections on the aspects in society, and then the influences from the aspects on society through to like reality. But one sec, I think my little cousin's calling. Alright, it was just somebody in the freaking neighborhood, but the major notions were referenced towards, you know, African American older men that had been within gangs for years, going to find school kids and recruit them to do things such as, you know, distributing narcotics, sell their bodies, and so many other things. And as you guys have seen in a lot of freaking coverage for major things that have gone wrong, and a lot of it's referenced towards literal like Hollywood, because a lot of people from Hollywood are freaking linked towards a lot of these things. But it happens a lot of times throughout the freaking nation with other celebrities that get linked into things such as, you know, sex trafficking, money laundering, narcotics distributions, and so many other freaking major things that you're like always like, oh my gosh, you're either like, oh my gosh, there's no way, or you're like kind of like, you know, it's been done to death, it just needs to stop kind of a thing. So it kind of helped keep a lot of people woke to these aspects of these things. So when we see it in like, you know, our typical day-to-day lives, it doesn't hit anybody as like this major thing where we're like shocked by it now. It's something where that's been talked about for years. We've been warned about these things, and that like organizations such as DARE that comes to you when you're children, and you know, dares you to say no to drugs before they get a chance to find you and try to get you to freaking sell drugs to them and stuff like that. So when you see people actually doing this stuff, you know, most of the time you don't really look 2 times at the person, you know, popping by to like literally, you know, try to sell you some green drugs. And when I reference to this being something that seems normal, it's if you ride any of the CTA trains, such as the Red Line in Chicago that goes from the 95th Red Line station to the Howard station. It is one of the major trains, and as you guys have, I believe I referenced towards it in one of my videos, but I wrote a paper about it for college, and it was one of my major things, my assignments for my public administration degree, I believe, where we had to cover government-funded agencies that work towards a cause, and the cause that I wrote referenced towards, you know, helping with homelessness, and some of the agencies referenced towards that were in Chicago were Starbucks, as they work to offer, you know, water to the homeless. That way they're not, you know, wandering around with nothing to drink, which would be inhumane. And the CTA Red Line, which specifically offers housing to the homeless throughout the day. And for a lot of the buses, the drivers also offer free rides to anyone who's homeless to assist with getting them from different parts of the city to the other parts and stuff like that, which is really cool in itself. But one of the major notions is that you've got that impact being reflected and being upheld, and then you're in your daily commute. So it's like, it's you, typical people, and then there are the homeless people that are like living on the train and like resting for that freaking like time period and stuff. I honestly wouldn't say living on the train, because you can't like literally live on the train. They do eventually like, close down for the day, and then they start back up like a few hours later, I believe. I'm not sure if they're able to like stay on the train like overnight-ish or so. I wouldn't be shocked, like, just letting them, sleep on the train throughout the entire day. Like, they can ride the train from one station to, so they can ride it from like the 95th and Red Line end of the line to the Howard end of the line freaking area, and then ride it back like all throughout the day. So I wouldn't be shocked if they let them literally like just sleep on the train and stuff like that, like throughout the night or the entire day or so. Or, well, honestly, throughout the entire night, because as referenced, I'm pretty sure they let them stay on it like throughout the entire day, and there are no issues. But one thing that you will note if you've ever been on the train is that there are a lot of narcotics distributors. And they typically will walk through. You will think that it's like, a typical everyday person, just, looking to find their seat. But a lot of times they travel through the train cars, and they pop up, and they kind of like, they try to like, sell people drugs. They're like, I've got, Loud on deck, they've got Saw, they've got Bud, they basically say everything except for, stating that they have, like, marijuana or the, like, other street term for it, which is weed. They literally just, do the Saw, Loud, oh gosh, I literally forgot the other one already, but that's their typical freaking thing, and then they just kind of, like, walk through, and they try to, like, sell it to people. And most of the train cars that I'm on, like, most people, like, typically don't buy anything. A lot of us have on, like, our headphones and stuff. I know I've learned to literally just throw off my freaking, like, my sunglasses to literally avoid having awkward eye contact with people, but to also avoid, like, those awkward moments where you may, like, make eye contact with the person who's trying to sell and distribute this stuff. And then cause them to think that you're like interested in the product, and then they kind of like look back at you, and it's like, I don't want any. I just, seeing, what somebody was happening to, speak about while walking through the train. A lot of people like, they tend to like, speak to other people that they know. So it's like, when you hear somebody talking when everybody is silent, you expect it to be like either like an announcement about something, or them just being on the phone or so. And then in those moments, it's like it's somebody who's trying to distribute drugs. But that's one of the major notions where you see it reflected. And for a lot of people, one second, guys, these service picking up, so I'm gonna turn, like, hold on, I'm gonna attack. For a lot of these situations, though, if you look at the people that are actually like selling the drugs, it's like people ranging from freaking like high schoolers after school to freaking like literal elderly citizens, and it's just become one of those things where it's like, for some it's their first jobs, which is, I know it's shocking as heck, but for some it's literally their first freaking jobs. For other people, it's like their last resort that they've come to be, used to. They've done it during their younger years. They got recruited by others. They bought some narcotics from a distributor, and then they were like, maybe I can make a profit off this. Maybe I can distribute narcotics myself and go into business myself. And then they stopped for a few years, got like a freaking legit job, and then after that, they were like, we're coming back to that, and then, now here we are in the future, and they're like 50-year-old freaking guys to like freaking like maybe 70-year-old guys. Like, you never really typically know their age. Most people don't stop them and ask them, and then if you know them, you know them. But they're like distributing narcotics with these freaking younger generations of people, and then it kind of makes you wonder, like, were they recruited into gangs? Was it something that they came up with on their own? And then a lot of people, sell in packs. So it's like that gang mentality is still present. And then there were a few situations where people actually referenced towards being in gangs while doing it and had. Okay, that is part 7. I was going to throw up the 6 again. If you guys go check the caption for number 6, I put it as number 7, so you're gonna see 7 ways. I add like a little like correction in the comments. I couldn't edit it and like literally change the title of it. So this one will actually be 7, and that one will be the 6 as planned. But yeah, you guys, there are a lot of crazy freaking notions, a lot of stereotypes that have gone from being stereotypes to literally being like ideal ways of life. And for a lot of the stereotypes, such as the baby daddy thing, I feel like that was more so influenced as an insult, as many African American men, felt as though they wouldn't be able to afford to do a lot of things, such as, buying a ring, like a very expensive, fancy ring for their partner. Which is another thing that I'm glad about in modern society. A lot of people are like, in reference towards that, I'd rather, not have my husband feel as though he has to freaking work like a freaking dog to afford to buy me this expensive diamond ring when maybe I want a freaking sapphire, maybe I want an emerald, maybe I want a lab-grown diamond, maybe I freaking just want a ring that's a ring, maybe I just want a golden ring that has like my freaking, let's say, like my birthstone, or just, anything added to it, maybe even a pearl or so. It's like the modern age where you can just pick what you want and literally explain it to your partner as though, like, I'm woke, I see what's going on in society, I know that realistically this stuff gets expensive, so shooting for the freaking stars for everything just to fit an ideal mold doesn't fit the ideal mold of who I am as a person, and I know who I am as a person. You're getting to know me, and with me sharing my insight with you, you're getting to also know that I do think of you as another individual, which is great in itself. But as stated, I feel like the baby daddy notion might have been more towards linked to African American men not having a lot of funds to, go get the expensive diamond rings for their partners to engage, to afford those large extravagant weddings. And up until recently, while going through the freaking pandemic, having webcam freaking weddings with your family members that couldn't attend was never really a thing. Having a freaking wedding that wasn't the ideal freaking like church wedding or the ideal wedding that you spend thousands on has never been a thing. Now we're in the modern age where it's like you can freaking grab a boombox speaker, or grab like a freaking like, a home freaking like DJ set and freaking do your own freaking like wedding party in your freaking backyard, which a lot of people have done for years. But most people always shot for the ideal goal of, having this big extravagant wedding, but they're expensive. You're paying florists, you're paying DJs, you're paying caterers, you're freaking doing the whole entire tux freaking flow, the expensive freaking wedding dresses, the expensive freaking shoes to go with those, the jewelry, the hairstylist. Then you're freaking getting you and your groomsmen all groomed up. Your bridesmaids are getting all freaking dolled up. The bridesmaids' dresses. The freaking flower girls' freaking outfits. You're freaking booking rooms for people. And there's just so many other aspects that make it just overly freaking straining on your personal finances. Like if you're going for like an ideal small but over the top freaking wedding, I'd say the least that most people would freaking pay, with having basically like kind of like maybe like half of those things added in there. Like say you want to do like your own like home catering session, you get like, I'll handle the freaking cooking myself, and then it's like, for the wedding dress, you have a wedding dress that's from one of your parents, that's freaking, $2,000 down for the wedding dress, that's freaking $500 down for the freaking catering. Let's say you garden also, and then you have like a bunch of flowers, so you do the flower arrangements from your own garden. That's freaking like another $500 freaking down for flower arrangements. And then for your freaking hair look, say you and your bridesmaids decide to freaking style your own freaking hair, then you take out the freaking stylist factor of it. Let's see. For your bridesmaids, say you just tell your bridesmaids to pick an ideal color and to grab their own freaking dresses, and then just have like a freaking like a uniform freaking look. Like there are a lot of ways that you can do the freaking ideal freaking wedding flow and just keep it within a budget, but it wasn't something that's been normalized until now. A lot of people didn't put that much thought into it. They just thought about the ideal freaking wedding type of vibe. So yeah, it was something where people were like, it's something to look down upon, African American men that come from families that have been recently freed from slavery, and it, added to that oppressive nature and flow within society. So that we have those aspects that it's kind of like coming to the present day, where a major freaking notion that we all joke about, it's like, the baby daddy, like, the deadbeat freaking father to my freaking child, or, the father to my child that I never got married to. Like, some people reference towards it, it's like, that's just my baby daddy, like, literally just a baby daddy. And then for other people, it's like, that's the baby daddy. Like, that's the freaking sperm donor, basically, because, I got nothing out of the relationship aside from this bundle of joy, and that guy has just been being that guy since the baby's been here, and that's a major thing in society. Which kind of helped to kind of like dial back the narrative of, most African American men just being baby daddies. And then with society itself, there are always a lot of people that go towards the different notions away from stereotypes. So, every African American man that you meet isn't going to literally be, distributing narcotics. They're not going to be, a baby daddy. They're not going to freaking walk around with an unregistered firearm. And that one's going to be one that I want to notion towards also, because as the weather is starting to get warmer, one of our major things that always sweeps the freaking news scenes around here is African American on African American violence during the warmer weathered months, when people start to go outside and enjoy the weather and stuff like that. It's a normal part of the flow of, getting out of the house after the freaking winter flow. I feel like, I popped out of the house to freaking go to work or to go to an outing, and then I came back home, like, still too cold for me, type of like thing. And for a lot of people, they have to be leery, because it's like, it's a danger of freaking flow starting again. Are people going to start freaking going back out and getting into gang violence, starting gang beef? That it's freaking, drive-by shootings from gang violence related to freaking drugs, beef. A lot of people have like their own independent beef, and then they bring their gangs and their friends into it and stuff like that, and then it turns into this entire freaking thing where people are freaking in danger. And it's been talked about so much in our society that most people are like, we all know to like literally steer clear of it. But for a lot of people, they kind of are like naive to the ideal of it, so they kind of like are in the flow of it, and they go for these situations and kind of just, put others in danger while doing so. And a major thing that hits our news stories every freaking summer around here, as the weather starts to freaking get warmer and people start to go out and function more and get back into our typical summer flow, especially as we start to conclude the summer, conclude the school year for summer. A lot of kids are with their parents, and as you would think, I'm leading towards, gang violence involving, children that are of school age. 9 times out of 10, the kids that are getting shot in the midst of this gang violence are freaking babies. They're like freaking like infants, they're toddlers, they're very young children that are just caught up in, the wrong areas with their parents. They're kids that are like, with their parents that are a part of these gangs that, have custody of their kid for that day, or are babysitting their kids for that day for their other partner, and while doing so, they're caught in like the midst of this freaking drama that they were a part of before, grabbing their freaking child, and now their child's brought into it. Their child's life is in danger, and then the news stories are hitting that, another child has been caught in the midst of gang violence and murdered, and it's shocking in itself, but these are the notions that happen within society. These are the notions that kind of help to give you like a bit of a gauge of insight as towards the baby daddy thing, and the kind of like the negative connotations for it, the freaking societal flow of it now, and the things that have helped to kind of, dial back some of these slurs and some of the insults and stereotypes, as people have really have learned to kind of incorporate the ideals of these things into their day-to-day lives, and have been able to kind of reflect upon these notions within their own lives. Alright, you guys, I'm going to do one more part. It's going to be like some personal stories. It should be like a short one overall, but as you guys know, my stories tend to freaking range up to like 10 minutes per part anyways, so let's see you guys for part 8. Alright, you guys, part 8. Alright, so since I was like planning on doing like an entire like warning message in the beginning of it, but then I was like, and I don't want to like do like an editing massage. I don't want to like have like a caption just over my face and then just have to like do like a brief like silent moment for it. But I mean, I could do one now and like literally just have it like above my head. But I'm just gonna do a verbal warning. So in this one, we will be covering like a personal story that relates to racism, and we'll be covering another story that kind of is like a notion towards sexual assaults and the notions of like predators and stuff like that, predators within relationships, people that you can meet in day-to-day situations, safe sex practices overall, and being leery of who you like connect with. So I did want to give like a notion towards that way, in case you're watching it and you're like, well, what's this one gonna be about? I heard it was gonna be like a personal one. This one is going to touch base on some aspects that I would rather you be mindful of before going into it, in case it's something that you're like, I'm going through something, I really can't right now, or if it's like, I don't know if I really can like handle this because you've gone through something personally. Also, just like, just the pre-warning before we go into this. Alright, so first, I'll go in the order in which I address like the warning. So the first one, as we end the racial stereotypes and racial biases, the do's and the don'ts portions overall, and then we kind of go more. This one's going to include a few more do's and don'ts, but we'll kind of like conclude the major segments of the like racial biases. But there is a tad bit in the freaking other story also. So when I went back home to California, I was literally just like chilling. I was actually looking to like meet a freaking new guy. I wanted to start a new job venture. I was like, I just completed my freaking associates like a year ago. I had been loving it, but I want to see if I can like actually do anything with that. But I was also gonna go for a law enforcement job, so that was like my major thought. Well, moving back home, I was like, I'm gonna start that, and then that's gonna be my freaking new job side while I'm back home, and I'm gonna finish my freaking bachelor's. And then I was also able to transfer my job from Chicago over to California, which was great because I didn't have to worry about, moving to a new area and then literally just having the funds that I had while coming there to literally cover everything. I was able to literally like pop back into work. Sadly, the workflow was like freaking super dry for a decent bit, so there were months where I was like, thank freaking gosh for my student loan funds, because I literally expected my workflow to be more conducive for my freaking way of life. So it was tedious. But in the midst of my freaking search for a new freaking lover, me enjoying being back home, taking care of my health, my wellness, trying to post some new content types for you guys. I really did like a bunch of that's where I started doing the DKH Legal Aid videos, and it was like super fun in itself. But in the midst of that, on my birthday, as you guys know, I was kicking back and enjoying myself. I met this freaking one guy. Now, this isn't the guy that this like story part is about. This just was in reference towards my birthday also. So I met this freaking new guy, and then we were talking for a decent bit. He was like, set to come pick me up from work because I was like headed home. He wanted to hang out, and I was like, it's gonna take me a while to get back home. Can you come grab me? And then he was like, yeah, of course, I'll be there to grab you in a bit. Me, just, expecting that everybody's like, a good Joe Schmo. They've had freaking, amazing parents that have raised them with moral standards and, to just know not to be like a sexual predator overall. And to know to freaking wait until your partners are freaking ready, I was expecting it to be like normal. This freaking guy wanted to have like birthday sex with me, like literally like upon meeting. And so we ended up like hanging out and stuff like that. And then this is one of those stories where I will tell you guys, I was a bit very like racy in this moment. I was like very uncomfortable going into it, but I really did like, I felt like, there was kind of like a connection a bit. We did like vibe very well, but I will warn you guys, it's always great to follow your gut feelings when it pertains to people, because if you feel a gut feeling that, this person may be off and that you shouldn't jump into something with them, always be mindful of it, because if you think to hold off on it and then you think to pursue something with them later because maybe you thought you were going into that mindset too early, 9 times out of 10 it backfires, and it ends up being one of those things where they kind of try to hold it against you in a relationship, trying to pressure you into having sex with them. So in that moment, we didn't like really end up like doing anything like too out of the freaking ordinary. And then in the midst of it, of course, you know, I was like, I'm gonna enjoy my freaking birthday flow still. Of course, you guys know I did my freaking typical Spanish food freaking delight such. I did I think I did tacos that year. And I was just enjoying being back home, being able to cook in my own freaking place, enjoy my first freaking birthday alone also. I was like so far from all my family members. I was like, alright, so there won't be any moments where I can literally just go, you know, okay, I'm enjoying doing my own thing, but I'm gonna go run off with my freaking family members for a bit. It was like literally just me like doing my own thing. So it was great to just be able to focus on myself and my overall day. And then I was of course connecting with them throughout the day. I think I had like multiple calls to my mom. I think we talked like that morning, and then I think we ended up chatting like a bit after I finished my work shift also, and then I think a bit like more like before the day concluded. But yeah, it was overall interesting. But later that freaking day is where I ended up meeting this like other guy, and in the midst of it, we were like chilling in the jacuzzi session. As you guys know, that was like my go-to while in my new freaking place. I was literally in the jacuzzi, like I would say maybe like at a minimum of like 3 times a freaking week, because it was like perfect for my freaking like my back, my freaking legs, and just freaking relaxing. Plus no one ever freaking went in there. 9 times out of 10 during the hours that I went in there, it was like that complete like end of the day flow. So it was just freaking perfect. It was like great to be able to just utilize that, relax, and then also to not feel creeped out, because I was really creeped out by a lot of things. I was like, you know, we've got a swimming pool here, no one ever goes in the swimming pool. Who the hell pays like, you know, high freaking rents to never use a swimming pool, to like never go in the freaking jacuzzis? And then it's like, I don't know, there were just a lot of like weird red flags. Like I felt like I was like home in a freaking cult. Like I was like, when I left initially, it was just California, and then coming back, it's I don't know, I just got like weird like cult vibes with a lot of people. And then there was a bunch of freaking drama that ended up taking place for the stories that I told you guys about what was going on in the complex that I moved into. I ended up posting a review on Google, and then the manager got back to me about it, and I was just like, you know, that was just really ridiculous. There was a lot of drama going on. There was a lot of freaking just weird biases. As I told you guys, I had Middle Eastern roommates, and they were like freaking just oddly freaking racist, and I was like, you know what? I'm mixed. Like I've been through the entire freaking, like, you know, I've dealt with my Caucasian freaking racists, and it's been like, you know, they're racism with other people, and I've had my freaking moments where I'm like, you know, I think I've had like maybe like one moment where it was like directed towards me, but it was like one of those things where it's like it could have been misinterpreted, but I still didn't want to freaking go through like any freaking racist moments without freaking noting it. And then I've been through I've been on the side with African American people where I've seen the reverse freaking racism freaking flows that is either freaking fueled by something that's taken place or just by personal freaking biases. So I was like, you know, to be going through this with somebody who's mixed was just ridiculous in itself, and I was just baffled by it. But we ended up talking about it during the first day. I told him that I really wasn't comfortable with it. That there was an entire room mix-up that I was never told about, and I told him I was like, I don't feel comfortable with this entire flow. Like, it's not like I have a personal bias against you. It's like I have like several Middle Eastern friends internationally that I chat with quite frequently. I have family members that are Muslim also. I have like a freaking mixed family of freaking Muslims, Christians, Catholics, like the entire freaking spew of freaking just, you know, different religious backgrounds, choices of, you know, faith that have come to be, you know, embody who they freaking are, what that they've come to embody, but that have come to literally represent who they are currently, that have become the faiths of their freaking children and generations after. So I was just like, you know, overall, I'm probably one of the most least biased, least racist people you're gonna meet, but I was like, to initially meet you guys and have it be like that type of a racist environment where not only are you saying racist things, like they were like, you know, this person just walked into the room and I thought they were going to rob us, and I was just like, because I'm brown, and then you guys know, of course, with me, I'm like, you know, I mean, when dealing with people that are like my skin tone, it just baffles you when they say racist things like that, because I was just like, You thought that somebody was going to knock before entering to rob you. You thought somebody had a key to get into the front door of the house and then had a key to get into the freaking room. Actually, I think the door was freaking open. But I literally knocked before entering, and then I popped in and said hi. And then they popped up, went over to the management team, and then were like, I thought somebody was trying to rob us. And I was just like, this is the way this freaking starts. So, okay, so part 9, you guys. This should be our final part. So overall, that's how that entire freaking situation went. It was freaking ridiculous in itself, and it continued to be freaking just ridiculous throughout. And it was, I don't know, it was weird. We had like a bunch of moments where it was like kind of okay. Then there were like a bunch of other moments where I was like super just like, I don't know, they were just very off-putting. They played like a lot of games also. I was talking to this one kid, and he ended up like lying about his age, and then he was like, then it like started a bunch of freaking drama, but it was like wasn't drama that I was brought into. It was like drama that he was like concocting with his freaking friends, and while still continuing to freaking lie to me about his freaking age and stuff. And then we were like supposed to be like chilling and freaking like having like date sessions, and this dude was like popping up and like, you know, asking me like buy him food and stuff like that, and it was just really weird. But I was like, you know, I'm not gonna freaking, you know, knock every freaking guy and just say that they're all pieces of crap. Like, you've got to give at least, you know, some a chance. You know, one of them out there has to not be a piece of crap. And then with that one, it ended up just being another freaking crap show. Then there was the freaking roommates, and it was like just drama and ridiculous moments after ridiculous freaking moments with by the end of it, our freaking, like, my lease was freaking fine. They just freaking lied about the renewal, so I wasn't able to freaking renew my lease. But then they offered me another apartment in one of the other complexes for the same rate. But the apartment was like freaking just like, it was like the size of my freaking closet. So I was just like, I'm heading back home. And then for my roommates, it was just like they ended up like voiding their freaking lease. They moved in somebody illegally, and then we just had like a bunch of other drama that kind of just continued to freaking add up to them, you know, having their lease voided and stuff like that. I in the end, considering the fact that the lease wasn't like up for renewal anyways, I don't think really anything was like majorly held against them. So it was like basically like, you know, getting a pass on the entire thing. I was just freaking shocked overall. I was like, this has been ridiculous. It's been great being back home, and there were a bunch of freaking really cool moments. I got to work with the special needs children and freaking helped his kid freaking learn to freaking use his hands. Like, he had no freaking fine or gross motor freaking skills overall. He couldn't hold a pencil or scissors, and after working with him for a decent bit, he was able to trace letters, you guys. I was so freaking amazed. Like, I literally had like my sketchbook. I got one from the dollar store. I sketched out like sheet after sheet of like letters, numbers, his name on some. I literally hand drew like freaking pictures for him to freaking like color in. I had like pictures of like Disney characters and stuff like that, and I drew a bunch of them, but I did them with like only the outline so he could like fill in everything, and he was like coloring in pictures. Now for the coloring part, he still kind of just did like a, you know, like scribble motion all over the paper, but he tried to stay like within the lines and within like the actual picture towards the end of it before I moved back home. And for like drawing letters, he would literally like work towards doing the actual dotted pattern. For using scissors, he, by like I would say our second week, was able to like actually hold them and like, you know, maneuver them, and then he was able to cut and follow the guided lines with assistance. By like our 4th week together, he was able to he was like so eager that he would like literally pick up the scissors during the beginning of our lessons and literally just go straight to cutting stuff while we would be going over, you know, word pronunciations, because he had trouble speaking also. So he was just, it was overall just amazing, you guys. It's like working with a kid that can barely speak and hearing them learn to freaking speak with elegance. Now, sadly, I didn't have that much time with him to literally hear him be able to completely speak without any hiccups, but believe in time, and with a lot of attention, that kid will be able to do it within a short freaking period of time. He was excelling at such a freaking fast rate while I worked with him that I believe that that child should be able to freaking excel at anything that he attempts to do, especially with the eager mindset that he brought to our lessons. But yeah, so that was like my major freaking notions towards that beginning portion. Now, getting back to the stories that I was telling you about. So, I felt as though the story fit for my birthday time frame that with the other guy that I was telling you about, where I was like, the other story isn't the guy that I'm talking about, but it is a notion towards another story. The other guy, I thought, I was like, did I end up meeting with him like later on my birthday, or was it like later, like in the weekish or so? I believe the guy that I ended up meeting up with was the guy that I met up with on a Halloween after I'd gone to the haunted house. You guys go check out that video. It's on my TikTok. It's like me doing the walkthrough at the haunted house. I'm like dressed up as a black cat. Got my like little nose drawn on. I made like the freaking little like ear sets. I took one of my headbands, glued on some paper, and then I think I painted the paper black first with a watercolor like crayon, and then I like placed it on top, bent it back a bit. That way it held upwards, and then still was like able to hold to the headband. Glued it. I think I let it sit like overnightish or so, but I might have used nail glue also. I'm not sure if I did school glue or nail glue. And then I was all set and good to go the next day for the freaking Halloween like haunted house sesh, which was really freaking fun. But after that concluded, I was like, I'm gonna wind down, do my freaking jacuzzi sesh, grab a drink, and enjoy the end of the spooky season vibes officially. And then I met this guy who lived within the complex, and then in the midst of talking to him, we were like chatting for freaking hours. He told me how he was from Indiana. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally from here, but I literally just came back from Chicago, and it's been freaking years. I'm just enjoying being back home. I've been like, looking to meet some new locals, just to like, chat, make some new friends with them. Like for the past few years, it's literally just been like freaking school, work, family, and I really haven't really tried to venture out into the entire friend scene. With it being Chicago, I don't want to like jump into the friend scene and then get drug into some freaking drama that turns into people getting shot out here. Like I'm like, it's like a major city, so you have to worry about going out and picking the right venue, because if you go to a club, clubs are getting like shot up. If you go to a bar, bars are getting shot up, and this is like in our actual city also. Like these are like news stories hitting here, so I'm not just referencing to like major news stories. So it's like you have to be mindful of these things. So it's like in making friends, am I gonna like literally? Are we gonna have to always be like chilling at your house or chilling at my house? Will there be like drama sessions where we're like literally chilling one day, and then it's like we're beefing over something that has like always been completely irrelevant to me? Like I didn't want to like jump into any toxic friendship relationships. So in meeting him, I was like, okay, this is interesting. I literally haven't had like a male friend since like high school, so I was like, this should be freaking like cool in itself. And then you're local also, so we can freaking chat. So we ended up like we chatted. He was drinking also. I think he had like a box of freaking like White Claws or so, and he was like kicking back, and he was like, well, I can bring over my White Claws, and then you've got your drink, and then we can kind of like chill and drink and then share a bit. And I was like, yeah, I've got a bottle of freaking vodka. And he was like, I drink vodka too. So I was like, alright, you can have some of my freaking vodka. He's like, you can have some of my White Claws. So we were like sharing and kicking back for the night. In the midst of it, we were freaking chilling. We ended up hooking up in my freaking room, and then we ended up chilling and talking the entire freaking night away. We ended up like watching movies and stuff like that. He spent the night over. In the midst of some point during the night, he ended up like puking all over my freaking bed and all over like the side of my bed and on the wall, which completely blew my mind, because we woke up multiple freaking times, and neither one of us freaking noticed. And I think like during like our second time waking up, he noticed it, but we thought it was only on the freaking bed. And then we were supposed to go like pick up his freaking cat that he had freaking pre-scheduled from the animal shelter together. And then we ended up getting like more vodka, so then we ended up like taking a few shots, kicking back and talking a bit more. And then in the midst, we took another nap, and then he woke up. He went to go get the freaking cat, and then I woke up, and I was like, oh gosh, well, I guess I messed up, because I woke up, I think, like, maybe, like, we were supposed to go, like, noonish or so, and then I think I woke up around, like, freaking, like, 2 o'clock-ish or so. But it was freaking cute and adorable, and we chatted, and we were, like, doing, like, the friendship love for, like, a decent bit. We'd, like, go meet up with each other, like, every few days. I'd freaking bring, like, over some vodka. He'd have freaking, like, White Claws and stuff. Sometimes I'd go grab, like, a freaking box of, like, the little, like, drinks in the can sets, and we try, like, new flavors and just kick back, relax, listen to music and stuff. But in the midst of one of our freaking conversations, he said something that just threw me the heck off. And I was like, I don't know if this friendship is gonna work. Aren't you guys gonna have to do one more part to conclude everything? But I definitely believe we can do this in part 10. We can definitely do this. Alright, you guys. We've got it to the dreadful 10. Part 10. Alright, so everything was freaking fine. We were chilling and listening to music this one day, and we were talking, and he just said something that threw me the heck off, and I was super freaking iffy on him for like a decent bit after until we just stopped talking. He was like we were talking about something, and in the midst of it, I think it was like he was telling me how I don't know, he just said like a bunch of things where he was like, he was telling me something about how he was like how he used to use the N-word back when he was like a lot younger, but it was like the hard ER word, and he was like with my friends, and then he was like, but I stopped using it, as much, and then later in the freaking conversation, we were talking about something. We were talking about like our family's like national freaking backgrounds and stuff like that. And I was telling him, I was like, I've got European roots and I've got my African roots, and that's my build up of my nationality basis. And in the midst of it, he's like, I think we were like ending the conversation, and then he's like, well, to me, you're still just a black guy, and I was just like, I was baffled. I was just shocked. Like, I don't know. If you guys know me, you know how I feel about the black and white thing. Like, I feel like it adds on to having something racist for people to throw at each other later. Like, it's like the baby daddy thing. Like, it's like, people work towards, making it something that's, less of an insult to people. But it's like, calling people black. Like, where do you think that came from? My major thought was that it came from, calling somebody black because of the color of their skin, and then, in society, as people work towards, equality, they were like, we'll turn the insult into something that's, lighthearted, and then just, incorporate it into day-to-day society. And then, as a reflection, we'll turn the, white insult of, the white man into something that's, lighthearted also. What if you guys are the white people? What if we're the black people? And what if we just don't throw it at each other and use it as an insult kind of thing? So I was just like, I was thrown off by it, especially when we were talking, like, him using the freaking hard ER word and having like a racist past. So I was like, don't jump to freaking call me something, number one, that I'm not okay with. That if you would have freaking asked me if it was something that I was okay with, I would have told you I wasn't okay with that. And number two, for you to use it in the conversation that we're ending about you having a racist past, don't throw me in that category, and don't freaking expect me to be freaking somebody who's gonna pop up with like with a baby mama, a bottle of Henny, a blunt, and just freaking shenanigans. Like, don't freaking, that's like, and the worst part is, that's like one of the modern freaking stereotypical views of black men, where it's like, getting drunk, a bottle of Henny in hand, a freaking blunt in the other hand, their pants like sagging down to their freaking kneecaps, and their baby mama in the background holding the baby, looking like sad and depressed. Like, just imagine that. And that's been like one of the major freaking stereotypes that I give people so much props on trying to not instill within society, and trying to do better for not only themselves, their partners, but for their children also, because it's just not something that's pleasant to think about. You don't want to think about people still being oppressed in the modern day after their freaking ancestors were freed from slavery nearly 200 freaking years ago. Like, you want to see them thriving, doing well. You want to see them freaking walking around looking spiffy, looking freaking presentable, and so they're just enticing to the freaking eye because they're just, somebody that you're like, they've got it going for them, and their partner is a lucky person, or they've got it going for them and they have so much to freaking look forward to. I mean, I would freaking, love to be with that guy if I wasn't doing something else, pursuing somebody different, or, maybe I'm single, maybe I want to go for that guy. Like, you want it to be that type of view, and you don't want people to ever be viewed as an oppressed people in a society where they're free. But that threw me off. And then we ended up having like a bit of like a spat in our friendship, because this one night he was like, I was like, So, because I'd brought over the last of my cans of drinks, and as I told you guys, we used to meet up like a lot. It's like he'd have his drinks, I'd have my drinks, and in the midst of it, I was like, can I have one of your drinks? Like, I just finished my last one, and then he had some of mine too, and then he was like, no, I'm not sharing with you, and I was like, you know what? This is just, it's too much. Number one, I feel like you're gonna have like a random like racist moment and it's gonna throw me off, which already set me in like this off-putting vibe. And then number two, you were just too aggressive with not wanting to freaking share, and I've been here with you too many times, and it was like I would say it was like maybe like a 2-month long freaking friendship after the entire freaking hookup thing and everything like that. And there were just a lot of nights where it's like, you know, you guys know me, I'm like that freaking overbearing, you know, are you okay type of person. So before I go home, if you're like freaking passed out drunk, especially after he puked on my freaking bed that one time, I always like, I'm like, you know, okay, roll over onto your side or onto your freaking stomach. I don't want you choking on your freaking vomit while you're sleeping. I don't want to freaking call you tomorrow and, you know, get no answer, come to freaking check up on you, and your neighbor says that the ambulance came to pick you up and you died last night. Like, I don't want to freaking leave you here and then find out tomorrow that you puked all over yourself. I don't want to freaking, and then I would literally, so my breakdown when we would get like super hammered, because I'd typically be like okay, and I'd go home and probably have like maybe like 2 glasses, because when I chill with him, I think we typically do like actual shots. So when it'd be like me just chilling at home, as you guys know, I typically like pour glasses like the end of my mimosa. So I would freaking head out and have like maybe like 2 more glasses, watch some freaking Downton Abbey, and then start working on my schedule in the midst of that for the following day for my student. And if it was like a weekend day, I would literally just conclude the night with some freaking Downton Abbey, maybe a freaking bath, some grub, and then just conclude it. But for that one, I would literally I would go into his kitchen and I'd grab him a freaking glass of water. I'd set it next to him because he typically like fall asleep in the living room. So that way if he woke up, you know, when you wake up after you're like super freaking hammered and it's like you really need something to freaking drink because you've only been drinking alcohol, so your body's like freaking at that dehydrated point. So it's like you have freaking water. If you freaking wake up and you're like puking, at least you're already on your side of your stomach, so at least it's going on the floor and not all over you. Or at least you have a chance to freaking literally just like, you know, wake up, roll out of it, and then head to the bathroom. And then if you need something to drink after, even if it's just to like rinse your freaking mouth out, there's still the freaking water there. You can freaking like use it to freaking gargle and rinse your mouth out, or do that in the bathroom, and then you have some freaking water. But we're at the 7-minute mark, you guys. We've got 3 minutes. I'm going to try to get through the last freaking story so we can conclude this entire thing. So I've been talking to this guy for a few months. His name is Joshua. And I was super leery. Like, this was like this guy that I met on Grindr. I had recently re-downloaded the app like a couple of months ago. And I'm always super leery because, number one, on Grindr, it's like a freaking like, it's very dangerous. There are a lot of people that, you know, don't go for the notions of, you know, starting actual conversations with people. It's like a lot of the times people are like, you know, straight to the punchline flow, and sometimes, you know, it's interesting, sometimes it's, you know, it's super enticing, and then other times it's like, you know, like, what if I'm looking for something different? Like, what if I literally just want to use this as like a dating app and I want to look for somebody who has like a compatible mindset? And it's like a lot of people look past, you know, what you have in your profile freaking set up, and they literally just like go straight for being super forward and stuff like that. So it's like, you know, that's something to be leery of in itself, but it's not really something that's very like worrisome. It's the notions of, you know, a lot of people not being tested and being on the application, and then, you know, wanting to jump into having sex with like everyone, and then it's like the next thing you know, it's like everybody is catching freaking STDs, passing them around to each other, and then it's just one of those things where I'm like, I always just want to be leery of that. But I ended up meeting this guy Josh on the app, and then we ended up like meeting up, hanging out. We've been talking for months. We've hung out like, you know, twice. Our first time hanging out, it was like, you know, like for a few hours during like the middle of the freaking night. That's one time, which is another weird thing on there. A lot of people do like only a freaking night hookups, like or night meetups and hookups, and it's like, you know, I'd like talk to people during the early hours of the day, and then we'd like schedule, you know, plans to freaking meet up or like, you know, hang out and stuff, and it would always fall through, and then I'd end up falling asleep in the middle of the night, and then I'd wake up, and then during the freaking following morning at like freaking like I would say between midnight and like 4 a.m. before like sunrise and before the official morning flow would start. They're like texting me like wanting to freaking hang out and meet up, and I'm like, why? It's always like a middle of the night thing. Like, why is, you know, being a gay man in the modern age or a bisexual man one of those things that people are still trying to like keep a secret when it's something that, you know, if you're working to be comfortable with yourself and to love yourself, you should let yourself out of that freaking oppressive flow also, because it's just, number one, it's uncomfortable for certain people that look at it as, you know, are you saying that there's something wrong with our way of life that you like are persistent on being a part of? Alright, you guys are gonna have to do one more. Alright, you guys, we've officially done it. We're at part 11. I can't do like the fingers for it unless I do 10 and then add on the one after, but we have made it to part 11. Alright, so we've been freaking talking for a decent bit, but the communication flow is just like super freaking off. Like, I will text him, and then it's like I have to wait like freaking like 2 to 3 weeks for a freaking reply from him, and it's like, I don't know, in the beginning, it was like waiting for that reply, like, you know, maybe he's busy, maybe he'll get back later, maybe it's just not, like, honestly, I would say, like, you know, maybe it's not that big of a texture, but in the modern freaking day and age, how else do we freaking communicate with people that aren't freaking there in our general vicinity? It's either you text or you freaking call, and if it's a business thing, you're freaking, like, sending an email. So I was really freaking thrown off by it. I was like, you know, it seems like there's that, like, you know, flow where it's like, you're interested when we're in person, and then when we're not in person, it's like you're kind of just like MIA all the time, which is another thing to be leery of, guys. If it's like a dead conversation flow, or you can't get like a freaking actual response from them within like a conducive freaking time frame that makes sense, 9 times out of 10 it's like a literal red flag. Like with this dude, I didn't really stress it generally, because it was like it could be like, you know, a yay or a nay, and then after we did like our second meetup, it was like after like a month of not freaking talking, but then I had the abscess surgery in January, so it's like it's not really anything that I'm really like too like, oh my gosh, has to freaking happen. Like, I want to freaking see him right now, because I was like, I'm still on freaking bed rest flow. I had the freaking second abscess start to pop up like during like my like first week of recovery, so I was like, I really don't want to do like too much overall. Like, I don't want to strain myself, I don't want to freaking like, you know, do anything that can cause anything else to like happen again. I don't want it to like freaking, you know, start happening, and then in the midst of it I'm like, you know, having a great time, and then I freaking just drop dead from the freaking infection going through my body. So I was like, you know, I'll just take some freaking time and, you know, feel better, do like the R&R type of flow, get the bed rest that's required, make sure the area freaking is like disinfected and clean constantly. And, you know, maybe I'll chat after, you know, see if there's anything out there, see if, you know, anybody's like, you know, down for the mingle, get to know each other, lovey-dovey flow. Or I'll just freaking focus on work and stuff. And in the midst of it, he like, you know, he messaged me, and I was like, I think during like week 3 after I had the surgery, and he was like, do you want to like come over and spend the night? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. Like, and I was like hammered that freaking night, and I literally just woken up in the middle of the night to freaking like grab some water, brush my freaking teeth, and freaking take a bath. And then he like freaking messaged me about that. I think either I took a no, you know what? I think I took a bath like after I'd woken up, or it might have been before, but I'm pretty sure it was like after. I was like, yeah, definitely. No, I did take it before, and then I fell asleep after, and then I woke up and I was like brushing my teeth, and then I was like, I saw the text me, and he was like, do you want to hang out and like come over and stuff? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And then this was like me literally just waking up though. Like, I think woken up like 2 minutes prior. I checked my phone, saw that he messaged me, and I texted back, and I was like, oh yeah, sure, like definitely. And then I was like, you know what, actually, I'm just waking up from literally being like literally being asleep. Like, I'm not like freaking just waking up like after my freaking chill moments where I'm literally just like in bed like, oh my gosh, alright, I'll get up and like just a freaking bed. Like, my body is like so freaking relaxed right now, especially after I have like really straining days where my freaking body is completely aching. Those are freaking crucial. So it was like I literally just woken up and I sent you that text, like, you know, like I just woke up, just saw the text, saw it, and I was like, oh yeah, of course. And I was like, wait, stop to get out of bed first, see how I actually feel, and plus I literally just woke up. Like jumping into this like right after I just woke up is gonna be me being groggy and super exhausted. And he was like, oh, it's okay, you can like come over, spend the night, and then we can like, you know, we'll just go to sleep together, and then we'll just, you know, hang out and stuff. And then I was like, oh, okay, that sounds freaking cute. Like I just gotta get out of bed, get ready and stuff. So I like got up, I freaking brushed my teeth, and then I like throw on like a casual outfit. I think I throw on like a pair of sweatpants, my freaking boots. Like they're my go-to when I'm leaving the house to do anything aside from going to work or doing like an outing or stuff. I literally just throw on like a pair of freaking sweatpants and my freaking boots, and then I literally just switch out when I get back home. Like I think at max I probably wear them for like 30 minutes a day while freaking leaving the freaking house, and then I just switch back into my normal freaking house clothing after. So I went over, we were chilling. It was like a cool night slash. Like whenever I bring go and pop up with him, we always end up jamming and listening to music and stuff. And then he always hands me the remote, like, you know, you can pick some of the jams and stuff. So I picked some freaking jams. Of course, I throw on some Aelia. I threw on some Doja Cat, I believe, and then some Doja Cat ended up like popping on a tad later-ish and stuff. He ended up telling me that his favorite song by her was the Moo on the Cow song, and I was just like super baffled because I was like, I always thought that one was more of like one of her comedic freaking like rap freaking songs, but it's on your favorite list. I was like, you know, I'll bear with you on it. I still think that she dropped some freaking really amazing tracks currently, and has dropped a lot of really freaking amazing tracks over the years that would have definitely been favorite worthy. But if that one's your favorite, I won't knock you on it. So we ended up like chilling. We freaking like went to sleep and everything like that. He was really trying to like push like the sex thing. Like with him, he always is like, you know, I just really want to like, you know, just have sex. Like I just want you so much right now. And if any of you have ever been in situations like that, like you guys know what I mean, where they're like pushing it, but it's like, you know, the way they say it, it's like, you know, they use it as an excuse to explain what they're like, you know, I'm just feeling like, you know, in this moment, like, have you ever just kissed somebody or like just been like sitting there relaxing and watching a movie with your significant other, and then in the midst of it, they're just like, oh my gosh, I just feel like so like turned on and like so into you, and I just want to like, and it's like, this isn't a freaking movie where you're like just sitting there and you're just waiting for them to like touch your hand before you like turn over and make out with them, and then it's like you're just having sex like right that night. It's like, you know, can we just get past the freaking, you know, one night stand phases, especially when you're not like the ideal movie guy. It's not like it's like the one night stand with the guy who's gonna freaking like call you back later, or that you're gonna like figure out that you were freaking in love with. It's like you're just having a one night stand with somebody that like you were actually planning to have like something with. So it just throws everything out of the freaking window. So I told him, I was like, again, I'm like really just not ready to jump into doing that this early, and I literally did just have the freaking procedure like 2 weeks ago. So I don't really think it's like the best thing for me to freaking jump into right now. So let's just, you know, stick to the original plan. So he was like, yeah, you know, of course, I'm okay. And the way that he did it was like that genuine, like, of course I understand. And again, he was like, you know, good at playing that character of like the trustworthy guy. Like he plays the character of like the understanding person very well, to the point where he like can literally sell it. So we ended up like chilling and hanging out. During the following morning, he lost his keys, and we had gotten out of bed, I would say maybe around like noonish after we freaking went to sleep, because I think we fell asleep around like maybe like 5 or 6ish, like right before sunrise. Or actually it was during sunrise, so I think it was around like maybe like 6 o'clock-ish or so. And then we had gotten into bed, fallen asleep, woken up, and fallen asleep again, on and off, over and over, until like noonish. Then at this point, he had gotten out of bed. I was like, you know, I might just fall asleep again, but then I like literally couldn't sleep, so I went to go chill with him in like the living room. We were in the midst of like watching some Family Guy and some other freaking like videos, and then he notices that he lost his keys. So I'm helping him look for his keys. We're like looking all over the place. I'm like, you know, checking our freaking pants and our sweatpants, you know, seeing if they, you know, fell into my sweatpants the night before. And then I was like, all right, they're not in there. So then I threw on my sweatpants and I checked his pants, and I was like, you know, they're not in there either. Then we had thrown on our pants and our sweatpants. At this point, he gets freaking really weird, and he's like, patting me down after I was like helping him look for it for like 30 freaking minutes, and I was like, this is sketchy, weird stuff. Where I'm like, and he's another person of color also, where I was like really thrown off by it, because I was like, if I told you I didn't have your keys, if you having your car keys is the only way for me to get home, why would you think I stole your car keys, literally, and like planning to like literally leave and come back and steal your car later, which was weird in itself. And then after, so I told him, I was like, well, maybe you should check your pants. Like, maybe they fell, like, are they inside your pants or so? Because at this point, I was, like, annoyed that he even thought to, like, pat me down and do, like, something like that. Because, again, when things like that happen, I feel like it's, like, a racial bias. And I'm like, for people of color to do that to other people of color, I just feel like it gets ridiculous at a point where it's like, are you standing against oppression, or are you just enabling it within society and then complaining about it later? Alright, you guys, one more brief snippet. Alright, you guys, part 12. Alright, so at that point, I literally told him, I was like, it's getting ridiculous. He was like, you might have to call a freaking Uber home. And I was like really sad because I was like, was planning on freaking, adding in the let's stop and grab some food on the way home. It'll be my treat. Then I told him about it before he had noticed that he lost the freaking keys. So then we were getting ready to head out, and then he was like, I don't know where the keys are. So then I was like, oh gosh, this is gonna suck. I was really freaking like hungry. Like, I've been here with you for like freaking like 10 hours, and I've had nothing to freaking grub on. I woke up from freaking like literally being asleep and came over and had like no grub in the midst of it all too. So I was like literally looking forward to grabbing some freaking grubs, and now that's canceled. And then by the end of it, you would literally throw me off with the freaking like pat down thing, and it was just really freaking weird in itself. But I was like, again, I'm not gonna freaking, be a stickler. It could just be like a momentary like weird thing. It may just be something that I have to freaking address later. And I did end up having to, like, he ended up like texting me. We were like texting back and forth. I was like, hey, do you want to hang out? I'm like in a freaking vibe state, like I really want to like, chill, meet up with you and stuff like that. And then he ended up like texting me back like, again, like a week freaking later, and I was just like, this is getting weird. Like, is there something wrong? Like, are you okay? And then he texts me back and he's like, I don't think we should continue talking to each other. Like, let me see if I can like, alright, I'm gonna screenshot it and then I'll attach it to the YouTube video so you guys can like check it out. But he ends up texting me, and it was like literally like the pressuring into sexting again. And I texted him back. I was like, as I told you last time, number one, I wasn't ready for it, and number two, like I literally just had a procedure in my freaking lower freaking like on my butt area, and I was like, I didn't want to freaking, number one, risk my health because you were like, wanting to do something that I wasn't like comfortable with. And number two, it's like, can we get to know each other before you like try to like jump into that with me? Like, it's like, I feel like it gets played out after a while. It's like every freaking guy, it's like, they're jumping into freaking sex, we're jumping into freaking wanting to have sex. It's like, the fast forward moving conversations and stuff, and it's like, is there ever something where it's like just the ideal, talking to somebody, have that connection, get to know somebody, and it's just, it got weird, and I was like, that was something that I was looking to avoid while meeting you, and it's like, you're wasting my time with being the exact opposite of what I'm freaking looking for. As my uncle would say, being the antithesis of what I was expecting and wanted. So, in that moment, he again freaking has like ghosted. We haven't spoken in freaking days. And honestly, I'm not really that sad or distraught about it, but as I noted in the beginning of like part 9 or 8-ish, no, I believe it was 9 for the freaking initial final portion, always be mindful of people that are trying to press you into having sex with them, into moving into like creepy freaking relationships where it's like, they're kind of, controlling aspects that you're not okay with, constantly pushing things that you already said, no towards, and then making you feel as though they're understanding of what you're stating, and then they then attempt to use it against you in later arguments, which is one of the major things that I wanted to note while talking to you guys about the guy that I ended up hooking up with on my birthday a few years ago, because although it didn't like go too far there was still that notion of feeling uncomfortable, feeling pressured into something that I really like didn't want to freaking do, and then it still ended up causing like a strain later. We talked for like months after, but there were a lot of moments where I had him on like block and unblocked because it was just like 1 second it's like we're having a normal conversation, and then the next second it's like wanting to jump right into sex. And the same thing with this guy, where it's like 1 second it's like, you know, we're just gonna chill and hang out, and then the next second it's like he literally want to stick it in my butthole, and it's like that's the only thing you're thinking about. And then you're like, you know, you're okay with not being able to do that, and then you're texting me stating that it's a problem because you can't do that. So it's just weird in itself, but something that you guys should always be mindful of. I love you. I will chat with you later. If you guys think of any other amazing, freaking great topics, think them out, text them out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Love you. Oh, and stay posted for the new music soon.